together. People, 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 and make it right. People, make it right, soldier.
Wow, that was the Soul Jazz Orchestra from deep in the heart of Canada, who've been making fusion music for quite some time now, blending soul, jazz, funk, Afrobeat, and Latin American rhythms into righteous music. This was called People, People. It's from their 2008 album Manifesto. Alrighty. Now I'm probably going to rankle a few uh, brains today by seemingly saying something completely out of whack. But bear with me, and I'm trying to get folks to see how logical some illogical things really are. And where we are today is a particularly pertinent place to start. Was it not inevitable, you think, that with soaring crime rates in several US cities, such as New York, Detroit, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, to name a few, and the attendant problems of violence, unemployment, homelessness, and other social issues that have skyrocketed under lackluster leadership? Wasn't it inevitable that somebody would step into the breach and people would say, thank God, we don't know who you are, but you are addressing something that is close to our hearts, and we can't live with this anymore. Thank God for you. You got my vote. Isn't it inevitable that it would come to a bold leader stepping into the breach, making what people would see as a smart move for an enterprising leader like Donald Trump? Wasn't that inevitable? Really? Of course. It was going to happen, if not with Trump, with somebody else. But responding to the same stimuli, if you will, the same kinds of problems that have assailed people now for decades, and they're tired. They want solutions. So I'm going to ask us to train our thoughts today on how the Democrats in the last couple of years especially literally fashioned, very carefully fashioned, a gift for Donald Trump, and he's accepted it. Do you understand what I'm saying? The leadership that Chicago has had, even though we've had incredible figures like Harold Washington, a bold leader, you can't argue against that, but he was in a way an exception. And still, as bold as he was, he could not and did not get rid of the seminal issues that had been affecting Chicagoans for a long time. And it built and it built and it built to the point where it is now. Chicago as a city is mired in antisocial and criminal behavior that has made many people in Chicago hostages to their own environment. The Democratic Party, as a party, too, decided this was too big an issue for them to tackle or to help a mayor like Harold Washington to tackle. They left him twisting in the wind, suffering money woes. We don't have enough money to do this. We don't have enough money to do that. And there was a continuous downward spiral. No matter how many great things were achieved under his administration, the core of Chicago was sick, poor, deprived, outraged, violent. And it got really, really bad over the next few years, the next couple of administrations, because they decided to respond as they did all over the country with formulaic approaches. There was nothing innovative about how city governments were dealing with pressing and urgent social, political, and economic problems in their cities. They instead decided to concentrate on pleasing middle class and upper class people, to placate them, to see to their needs. But that bottom pool kept growing and growing and growing more and more disaffected, more and more out of reach, because administrations weren't interested in reaching them. Thus, homelessness grew to alarming rates. Illnesses spread. And the city gradually kept going downward, just like New York. Okay, you had some mayors, lots of personality, excuse me, lots of personality, and they're bold, and they're sensitive to how media works, and they play to the cameras, and people are under the impression that something is being done about the problem they see and experience every single day: homelessness. You have people sleeping in the street. You practically are stumbling over them when you walk on the sidewalk. You have crime. You have all of the social maladies that come with that kind of existence in a big city where few people care. But the party did not see fit to help its mayors become proactive. It did not see fit to support them in their quest, their priorities, to set their priorities straight. You couldn't have lived in New York recently under Koch and still deny that there were two New Yorks. There was a New York that, loved cafes and went to the museums and lived a good life. There was a New York that slept every night in a hovel someplace where they can squeak out the night and not freeze to death. There was a New York where nobody had enough to eat. A New York where neighborhoods that were once thriving just absolutely collapsed. The whole infrastructure of the community collapsed from lack of attention and care and a proper response from City Hall. And they became very confident that what they were doing was just fine and acceptable, because who is going to take them on? Who's going to take them on? The Democrats had it made. That was the attitude that was pervasive around the country. And we're seeing under the microscope now the end result. We have the rise of a Gestapo type police operation, as we saw in Portland, Oregon, and we shall soon see in Chicago. Because the inability of the Democratic Party to wrestle with these problems and to solve them in a timely fashion and in a sensible fashion gave rise to an embittered electorate. And you also had the rise of Republicans who saw they could use this to their advantage. This is why Trump is responding the way he's responding. He is not interested in solving the problem. Let's both be clear about that. He's interested in using the situation to advance and to overturn the previous, what should I say? People were turned off by the Republicans, and he's trying to turn them back on through masterful despotic means. That's what he's doing. So I'm making the argument that the lack of attention that the Democratic Party as a whole across the United States, the deaf ear they turned to the cries of those at the bottom, that then had the spillover effect of people literally scratching out a life as best they can in order to live for another day. That might include robbery. It might include, bringing a whole neighborhood down. It might include a number of things, literally destroying a neighborhood. But the party of the city, the Democratic Party, did not respond well, and in some cases didn't respond at all. They thought if you shut their eyes, just like Trump, you shut your eyes, the problem will disappear. And it didn't. It grew worse. So that's the question I'm posing. Wasn't it inevitable that a Trump will come along and literally be supported in these draconian methods that he's employing in these big cities to literally make the undesirables disappear and restore these major cities to their grand, almost totally white pasts? Wasn't that inevitable? And did not the Democratic Party and its leadership, via the mayors that were elected in these big cities, who proceeded to ignore the problem, Uh, didn't it give people like Trump a great gift? Trump, you do whatever the heck you want to do, just make it go away. We support you in this. Yeah, we know some people will get a bit beaten up and broken bones, and some people may even get worse treatment than that, but you got my vote because this cannot continue any longer. Who's up to answering the question? We'll take this break and we'll come back and figure out what your answers and reactions are right after that at 888-874-4888.
People, 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 get it together. People, 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 make it right. People, people, we don't stick it to the man now. People, people, make them understand. People, people, there's a new war going on.
You're listening to Leid Stories, and you're listening to PRN, and you're listening to Leid Stories on PRN. I'm Yatrice Leid, and we're talking about the inevitability of things. What we're seeing now wasn't just put together now. It was fueled, that's my theory, it was fueled by years of failures of the Democratic Party to actually solve problems. They talked about it and they referenced these problems, but they didn't solve them. They didn't seriously tackle these problems. It may be unfair, you think, to criticize that, but we can't deny that these are contributing factors. And so it gave rise to an enterprising politician like Donald Trump. I've got a surefire thing here. Even people who were not inclined to give me a second thought, they will be listening to me now. They'll be inclined. They may not like my tactics, but they would be very grateful that I'm solving the problem. Yeah, I have some Gestapo units out there, but they're doing exactly what needed to be done years, decades ago. But here we are, stuck in the problem, and people are expecting that we should all just sit down and talk about it. No, I'm taking action, bold action. You may not like it, but I am going to deliver the results you want. Wasn't that inevitable? 888-874-4888. Jerry from New York, you're on the air.
Hi, Yatrice. How are you?
Okay, how are you?
Good. I am saddened when I listen to you a lot of times, but sometimes we're on the same page, and I appreciate that. But that's what I do. I try to always listen to both sides, and you come from a different world and sometimes maybe different experiences, that type of thing. So I always take it in. I always try to look at a situation and pick the best and what works. Sometimes it really bothers me how literally you can blame everything on Trump. He's trying to be reactionary to a situation that he really has nothing to do with. He's, I think, trying to stay out of a lot of things because he's letting the governors and mayors of these cities go about and do what they're supposed to do. But they're not reacting. I was very disheartened yesterday, if I can get to that. There was a million things I wanted to address. But what's overlooked in these situations are the people who are suffering at the hand of it's not even Black Lives Matter protesters anymore. It's not peaceful. In Oregon, they're 98%.
You're all over the place here.
Right.
You're giving us a panoramic account. I'm trying to get you to focus and come to one conclusion that we could discuss. How about that?
Okay. Which one do you want me to touch on?
I'm not going to choose for you. I'm just saying,
Okay.
whatever you do,
Okay.
Don't take us
What?
on a scenic tour.
Okay.
We don't
I'll
have
try
time.
to. Okay, so my point is, you're trying to blame it on Trump, but he's actually being reactionary to situations that have not been addressed. And my heart goes out to the poor people suffering in these cities who are trapped in their homes, are being victims of violence. I don't understand how it could be woven, and it seems like there's always an agenda, because if you really look at all different news organizations, when the picture is painted as if they are peaceful protesters, that's coming from a different agenda. These people are not
So you're
peaceful at
you're
all.
off topic already. Again,
I guess
give
it's not
us
just one
the
matter that we're
straight
dealing with. There's so
skinny.
many.
Just give us the straight and narrow. Walk that road for a while and see how it feels. I'm
That
not interested in whether you approve of Trump. I'm interested in understanding Trump. I don't personally have an axe to grind with Donald Trump, but I do like to analyze things. And
but
yes,
some.
he comes in for a lot of blame because he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. But what he is doing that makes sense as a politician, I'm not saying it makes sense in the general sense, but he is interested in winning. He knows he's down. His, as I said in the previous broadcast, his campaign is flagging, it's sinking. And this is what he knows as a PR kind of guy, a media savvy guy. You got to do something dramatic. And it's not because you like people and are concerned about the people. It is that you are concerned about winning. And here, it just so happens that you have a great topic to deal with that will attract attention. And in so much as it will attract attention, you give the people what they want. They want a firm hand. They want resolution. That's what you say. He's not interested in actually doing any of that. Donald Trump doesn't like to work.
I don't agree with that. I believe that, honestly, I believe that he would have acted a long time ago had he not been held back. He does not want this going on in these cities. But if it didn't get to a certain point where everyone can see it very clearly, and you do apply your agenda to him, and it does seem like a very personal grind. It does seem race-based and all this type of stuff. I don't think he would have reacted.
I'm reacting to his racism. He is an inveterate racist. There's no question about that.
There is a question, because Biden's the one who has 48 years worth of
You're
work.
taking us into that Biden versus Donald Trump. I'm not talking about Biden. I'm talking about the ingenuity of Trump to fashion out of misery and out of problems not being solved a fantastic strategy
But who
of
created
getting out of the doldrums.
But who created the misery? He has nothing to do with this.
I'm not interested in answering that question. It is not pertinent about who created it. The fact is, it exists.
Okay. So my point of view is, I wish he would have acted a long time ago in these situations that are going on in these cities. I wish he would have acted a long time ago, but he didn't.
But
because
you're not answering the question. You are not.
So what's the question?
I don't know how to phrase it so that you understand the question. The question was, is it not inevitable that because the powers that existed at the time did not do a good job of handling the myriad problems that they were confronted with in all of these cities, that Trump, this is going to be a centerpiece of his campaign? Wasn't that inevitable? It could have been Busby Jones. But Busby Jones would have recognized the same thing. This is something that should be a centerpiece of my campaign. And I didn't even have to invent it. It was given to me by defaulting previous administrations. Thanks for getting us started today, Jerry. Ed from Jamaica, you're on the air.
Hey, good afternoon, Trace. How you doing?
Okay, Ed, I hope you're doing well too.
Hanging on by my thumbs. Hanging on by my thumbs, my friend.
The,
That's what we're
the,
doing.
the, the famous thumbs.
The famous thumbs, well developed now. Jerry aside, I mean, the bottom line is this. It's not just a democratic failure. It's a government failure. There was a vacuum of leadership. There was a vacuum of social responsibility. There was a vacuum of what real politics are supposed to be about. And the leadership, Congress, Senate, Democrat, Republican, mayors, governors, they were empty suits. They were inept. It became a cult of personality. And from the I believe, honestly, in my lifetime, from when Ronald Reagan took office till today, created the vacuum and allow a person like Trump or a person of that ilk to take political power, because there was no political power here. There were racism, poverty, homelessness, unemployment, lack of medical care. All of these problems were manifesting for years in this country.
Of course.
I can go back. I go back when I was a child. The first homeless person I saw was during the Reagan administration in Queens. The first homeless person I saw was the second term of the Reagan administration. And from that point on, when politics became a cult of personality and a lack of social responsibility, when the players in this game became more involved with how they look as to what they do, they're outnumbered now, and that's causing the system to fail. And Donald Trump is just a manifestation of all of that neglect.
But we can't deny that while you had all of these aberrations throughout the system, we can't deny that we could look at certain cities and see it magnified. You couldn't ignore it. You couldn't pretend you didn't see it. And I named some of the cities: Philadelphia, Detroit, and other major cities, Los Angeles, other major cities. It was there all these years under Democratic leadership. And basically, this is my argument, did it not make it inevitable
Well, they
that
did
it
not address
reached
it.
tipping point, and Donald Trump, being savvy, he's running for re-election, he's in trouble, his campaign is in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
This would serve as a great gift to him to revitalize his campaign. All of the problems and pains of the past that went unsolved or even unattended.
Well, you have to look at it. You have to look at it in the whole picture. Capitalism needs somebody on the bottom to be successful. And that's what the fundamental drive of America was. Calvin Coolidge said it nearly over a century ago, and it's still true today. The business of America is business, and that business is capitalism. And a lot of people are financially benefited from the condition. And that's why this man is allowed to manifest himself and is allowed to do what he does, because a lot of people benefit from this condition on both sides of the fence for the one uniparty, as David puts it. And that's the problem. The system is corrupt. You can't. Some things go. I'm a mechanic, like I told you 1,000 times. Sometimes the system needs to be replaced. Sometimes the system is so corrupt. Sometimes the engine gets so corrupt. Sometimes the cooling or heating system is so corrupted by neglect, by lack of maintenance, by lack of attention. You must get rid of it and start afresh. And I believe that's what's happening now.
So basically, you busted my theory. You don't see that it even comes close to explaining what is going on.
I mean, I agree with you. In theory, yes, the Democratic Party, you can point them out. The Republican Party, it's the system. The system, the foundation of this system is capitalism, and capitalism is corrupt. There has to be a fall guy. There has to be someone at the bottom. There has to be for somebody to be on the top. There has to be a wealthy class. There has to be a stratification, and all the mechanisms that feed that stratification are allowed to manifest.
But Trump is not
progress,
talking. Trump is not talking about the guy at the bottom.
No.
He's
Trump
talking
is
to
an
the guy
eagle.
at the top, saying that the guy at the bottom is the cause of his trouble.
Well, he's playing what Nixon played during the law and order, the racial division in this country. He's playing off of it. He's using it to his advantage because of his inaptness, because of his lack of ability to be an effective leader, because of his lack of administrative skills, because of his general lack of intelligence. He's using the last resort of the bully, which is violence. He's using the bully pulpit. He's enlisting secret police. He's violating congressional acts. He's using his ability to manifest that. That's what he's doing.
All right. Well, you I think make excellent points, but I still say we can't just say this is about Trump. What we have to see it as is a candidate, a very zealous candidate, perhaps even overzealous candidate, receiving a gift. It might have been an unintended gift that was nonetheless a gift. And he's going to make the most of it. But that gift came to him via inattention at the leadership level in these cities that failed to address, let alone solve, these social problems and economic problems that their cities were experiencing. And these happen to be the ones that we're talking about were predominantly Democratic-led cities. Thanks, Ed, for your comments today. Good points. Gwen from New York, you're on the air.
Hi, Yatrice. I wasn't going to call. Can you hear me, Yatrice?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, I was just saying hello.
Okay. Oh, hi. I'm sorry. I'm really out of it. We had a death in our family, and I really wasn't going to call. But I heard Miss Jerry on July 16th talking about reparations, and then I heard her again today. And I find that point of view that was being espoused to be extremely upsetting to me, because I think that it's the Jerrys of the world that are bringing the Trumps to fruition because of their ignorance of how things work and their utter ignorance of the history of the country and what we are founded on, and their knee-jerk reaction that we should just do this and we'll get that. That is not how it works. I also don't see that it can be any one party's fault either. I think that there's 2 points of view here. There's a Republican one and there's a Democratic one, and there should be more on the floor. But I think the Democrats have shown weakness, and they've capitulated to the thuggery often of the Republican Party. And because we've shown blood in the water, it's been exploited. This was never a perfect group to begin with. But there were times when there were people that stepped up. There was also, I suppose, along the way, some Republicans that were fine. But I think that we've gotten to a place in our country where we are ripped into, you're either this or you're that. You're either a Democrat or Republican. And nothing is working because that kind of thinking does not work. And that is what brings dictators like Donald Trump in office. And ignorance that's constantly espoused on the TV and through leaders like President Trump is bringing us down even faster. I find it very, very, very disturbing when I hear ridiculous comments like the ones that were made. he said, she said, back and forth. You know, we're not going to get any bag of joy with Joe Biden either. I certainly am not voting for Joe Biden. I am voting against Donald Trump. He is extremely dangerous. And if you can't get that now, if your audience can't get how dangerous he is and where we are going to be in the same place as Argentina was, and as Germany went to, if we allow him to go any further. This is a private military industrial company that he has hired and put into minivans to kidnap people, civilians. And let me also tell the nice white lady who called in the beginning that you probably, I'm guessing you don't live in one of these neighborhoods. I live in East Harlem for 35 years. I've never moved. I have seen so much. I can't teach you what my eyes have seen in 35 years. I cannot teach you that. But there is two Americas here. And there is a reason why people respond the way they do. And when you keep shutting them up and you keep putting your hand over their mouth and you keep telling them, oh, that doesn't really hurt. Oh, and it's not really your pain. And I'm certainly not responsible for everything that happened to you. Listen, wise ass, you are responsible. We are all responsible. When one person hurts and gets kicked down, 10 other people are going to feel that pain. And if we want our society to keep going, if we want to move on and we want to have a future, we have got to stop pulling each other down and trying to tear the soul of this country apart. We have to get together and we have to start acting like a democracy in some form. We've got to look at that paperwork called the Constitution, and we got to start following it. Because
I
this
ask
crap.
you the question directly. Was what is happening today that places Donald Trump in a pivotal role once again, despite the fact that his campaign was flagging, going nowhere, it now has revitalized his campaign. Was this a gift? When I say gift, I mean through inaction by previous administrations.
Yes, it's
not.
Yes, it's
okay.
Yes, it certainly was. It certainly was. And I can tell you, every single charlatan that called himself a Democrat and somebody that was a progressive, I can show you all the little millionaire kids that came out that ran and got in offices. I can show you the weak mayors that wouldn't stand up. There's one right here in New York City that would not prosecute a murder that we all saw. 11 people stood around this man that were in public, and it worked for the city, and watched Eric Garner be murdered. And we still have not brought them to trial. And this is the way it goes. The longer you let things like that sit and you don't do anything and you don't take an action and you don't bring justice, the more that fire of bitterness burns and people eventually are going to act out. And please don't tell me people don't have a right to act out. I mean, nobody has been more repressed in this country than Black people. Nobody. It goes on every single day. It's blatant. It's in your face. And it's constantly a struggle. So nobody's asking for a handout. I think people are just asking for some respect, some dignity, and to acknowledge that these things happen. Stop telling me it didn't happen. I can see what happened. I can see what happened. It's here. And we can't move forward. The only way we're going to move forward, and watch out, all you people are there wanting a revolution. You know, my mother, who's 94 years old, keeps telling me, careful what you ask for. You know, revolutions are not what you think they are. She's got plenty of living experience, and she's seen quite a few things. My father was in World War II. He jumped out of a burning airplane twice. Careful what you ask for, because with the revolution comes all kinds of other chaos. Everything comes in. It's not just one thing. And you know what? Maybe this system we have is extremely flawed, but maybe if people didn't also exploit it, it wouldn't be so flawed. Maybe it's the people in any system that seems to destroy it, because I see that even in communism, you've got people that come in and exploit it. There are still people that are living in communist nations where certain people are really, really rich and they're okay and they can go on and do their thing, and everybody else is toiling and laboring. I mean, so this is a very imperfect system, and I call what we live in right now cannibalistic capitalism. Write that down. Cannibalistic capitalism. That's where you're sticking your own knife in your own stomach and you're getting crap like Donald Trump. So I'm gonna leave you with that as my.
Thank you for contributing today. E from Edgewater, you're on the air.
Hello, Utrice.
Hello. I could barely hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm
Okay,
talking.
much better now.
Okay. Yeah, there was a little problem in the end between Gwen hanging up and me picking up, so sorry about that.
That's okay.
Yeah,
So
I
go
just
ahead.
think that it doesn't matter if it's Donald Trump or Obama or Bush or Clinton or Johnson, Nixon. Doesn't matter who the president is. We're always in a problem. We're always going to have a problem because the problem is that the ruling class is in charge and they get everything they want and we get nothing. And we're being, we're having our lives all disrupted and tossed around so these people can get richer and have a big party.
I do want you, though, to specifically address the question that I asked. Was the widespread failure by many Democratic mayors, this is local leadership now, to deal with these problems that were clear for at least 20 years, 30 years, their inability or just plain failure to address and solve these problems in a considerable way? Did it basically give rise or give encouragement to a presidential candidate like Donald Trump saying, you gave me a gift, I'll use it? I'm not hearing you.
What you're saying is the Democratic mayors and governors, they're giving Donald
Not
Trump.
just the Democratic ones, but I'm talking in the sense of, we're talking about bipartisanship. I'm talking about in these major cities that Trump is targeting, they happen to be all led by Democrats. And they have a history of Democratic leadership.
Yeah, but I see it all as a distraction from what's really going on. And what's really going on is people are dying by the thousands every day, and not a shot had to be fired or a bomb had to be dropped.
But we're
and
not
we're
just talking
caught up in all this minutia. We're caught up in all this minutia.
We're talking about when administrations, successive administrations, understood, because it was all annotated, it was all quantified, that the cities, many cities were in trouble and producing unhealthy fallouts, people living on the streets, people, mental patients who did not get care, the elderly, schools that were not adequately funded, all kinds of social problems emerging that they did not address, many of them, let alone solve. Didn't that help the rise of Donald Trump with a dictatorial program that says, vote for me, I could get this thing done, I could solve it? You may not like some of the draconian things that I have to do, but I will solve the problem. Does that not help his argument?
It helps his argument, I guess. If you're, caught up in this political game, it's really, it has nothing to do with what's really going on. Our lives are being tortured. That's the bottom line. We're in big trouble. We can talk about Donald Trump all day, till the cows
Well, that's
come
the
home.
subject as it happens today. That's what we're talking about today.
I
And I
understand
want
that,
us
but
to be,
I heard the first few callers
on.
didn't
That's what
seem
we're
to
talking
deal.
about. Did the inability of previous administrations to take care of business, did it not leave wide open for an enterprising politician? It could have been Trump, it could have been Joe Dokes, to slide in there and seize upon those things that were not done, that have had enormous effect over the years. And he steps or she steps in and declares, I am the answer to your prayers. I will solve this problem. I will solve that problem. You may not like what I'm doing. You may think that I'm being dictatorial or draconian, but I promise you, I will solve these problems. Was that not these problems that had accumulated over these years? Did they not provide a gift to an enterprising politician?
Yes, but what caused those problems to happen? Why are these
But
problems
we're not
existing?
discussing that. We're not discussing what cause. There are many, many hundreds of causes. What we're talking about is the reality at the bottom line. You have an administration or several administrations that have been in office for all these years, failing to solve these urgent problems that they were urgent 30 years ago. And they have become even more urgent now. And does that not give a person who really wants to be president a perfect opportunity to say, I know how to correct that. I know how to solve that. So that in the end, you could make the case that the failure of previous administrations to deal with and solve these problems literally might give rise to a monster leader.
Yeah, it's probably happened many times in history, that people are tricked and they fall for the okey doke, and then we end up with a Donald Trump or the rest of them. I mean, they're all the same. To me, it really doesn't matter who the president is, who's benefiting from. Why are these things happening? Why are they allowing it to be this way? This is what we should be discussing, I think. It's just there's too many things involved, like you said. I'm sorry I called today if I really wasn't on the right topic. But
I'm not sorry that you called today. I'm always very happy to hear from you. Thanks for calling in.
there
Duke
was just
from
one
New
thing,
Jersey,
though.
you're on the air.
Hello?
Hi,
Trees?
Duke from, yes,
You can hear me okay?
yes, I can.
Okay, so I'm going to go, I said I was only going to call on Freestyle Fridays, but it's hard to listen to the program sometimes and not just pick up the phone because I'm listening, I'm yelling through the phone, I'm yelling at my radio, so I'm making an exception today. Your question was, it's kind of a rhetorical question though, Trees, to be honest. Was the widespread failure to solve these problems, did that create a rise of Trump? Well, of course it did. Of course it did. I mean, in any situation, the pendulum is always switching back and forth. In terms of politics, left and right. I mean, so it's obvious that it led to Trump. But, I mean, you could just look at local levels. Let's just take what we know, New York City. I mean, Giuliani came after Dinkins. So, crime was going down during Dinkins' period, but the city itself just seemed in such a wreck that the pendulum moved to the right, and then Giuliani came in. So the pendulum, the answer to your question is obvious. But what made me had to call was your first caller today, the woman Jerry. you know, I understood exactly what Jerry was saying. And my point here is, what we got to realize is right now, I don't care what the polls say, but the pendulum is going to be moved. The closer we get to November, when people really have to go into that booth, the pendulum is shifting towards Trump. And I'm going to tell you why. And it could just be a coincidence that since this corona thing came in, there's a certain fear in the air, an unknown fear that everyone has, no matter what side they're on the medical part of this. There is this unknown fear. And then at the same time, all this crime starts happening through these protests. Now, we know what that's all about. The protesters are not creating the crime, but all of a sudden, people get this perception of being out of control, and the fear starts to grow. And people like Jerry are exactly the type of people who are on the fence. I could tell she doesn't really like Trump, but she's becoming so fearful that Trump is her only alternative to what she's seeing. You know, we've all heard about how gun sales have gone up so much since the protests started and since the violence that came out of the protests. So you got to be very careful because, and even you, Trees, you have to be careful how you critique this guy because none of us like Biden, but we are afraid of Trump. So how do you get people who don't like Biden to vote for him? It's going to be right now, the way I'm seeing it, Trump he's in good position to win this thing again. And then it's all over. He's in very good position to win this again. Now, we got time before November, but if the crime wave keeps picking up in the big cities and white people who are in the middle start getting more and more afraid, he's going to win again. No question about it. So we got to be very careful. And the Democrats, they can't make a misstep here. And, of course, one thing we can rely on them, and that is to make a misstep. So I'm just do you understand what I'm saying, Utrice?
I understand what you're saying, Duke. I thank you so
very,
much for
very
calling
nervous right now because, you know, I get most of my information from two sources. And there's a reason why I'm doing this. I get it from CNN and MSNBC on the left and Fox and Newsmax on the right. Now, I don't want you to think that I'm an idiot sheepy like the masses of American people. I'm watching those sources for one reason, because now that I'm not working, I have the time to look at this thing called the idiot box. That's what my mom used to call a TV, the idiot box. And I can see how these people are carving out the two issues. And from what I'm seeing right now on the right, they're making bigger points, even though the polls don't show it. But we know you can't rely on polls. The left, the anchors at CNN and MSNBC, they're lost in the sauce right now. And I'm going to tell you why they're lost in the sauce.
But no, don't tell us why, because you've taken us off the track sufficiently.
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, the answer to your question
we'll have to deal with that analysis that you're offering or beginning to offer now on another day. We've come to the end of the program, unfortunately. We've run out of time. But I thank you very much, Duke, for your considered analysis and opinion. I thank you all for doing that today. And let's meet again tomorrow and do some more talking. Bye-bye.
People, 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 get it together. People, 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 make it right. People, people.
Hi, I'm Gary Knoll, and I'd like to introduce you to a very important product that I've created. It's called Green Stuff.